So you're building out a bunch of serverless APIs, and you're starting to wonder, how do I keep this from turning into a complete mess? Well, today we're going to lay out the blueprint for doing exactly that, using two of my favorite Azure services, API Management and Azure Functions. Let's dive right in. You know the feeling, right? If you've been in the serverless world for any length of time, you end up with dozens, maybe even hundreds of tiny little functions or containers, and each one does its job perfectly. But how do you present a single, clean, secure front door to the world without it all falling into chaos? And that's really the big idea for this whole explainer. We're going to hire a single, super intelligent gatekeeper to stand in front of all our backend services. This bouncer is going to check IDs, manage the crowd, and direct everyone where they need to go. And this lets our backend code focus on what it's actually supposed to be doing. In our world, that bouncer is Azure API Management. Okay, before we get into the nuts and bolts, let's just zoom out for a second. Why are we even doing this? It's all about decoupling. You want to separate your clients, your web app, your mobile app, from all the messy complexity happening on the back end. Your app shouldn't have to know which specific function to call. It just needs one stable, reliable address to talk to. Now, this whole approach has a name. It's a classic design called the API gateway pattern. The gateway itself becomes that single front door, and it handles all those annoying but absolutely essential jobs. We're talking authentication, rate limiting, logging, all the stuff you don't want to write over and over again in every single function. It's literally designed to bring order to chaos. So let's trace a request, starting from the outside world. The very first place it's going to hit is our front door, our API management service. You can think of this as the main lobby for our entire application. Okay, let's follow the journey of a single API request. It all starts right here. Every single call, I don't care what it's for, has to come through this one checkpoint before it can even dream of getting to our backend logic. So what's its first job? It's basically a traffic cop. A request comes in looking for, let's say, /products. API management sees that path, and it knows exactly which Azure function in the backend is built to handle that request. It creates this beautiful separation between the public URL everyone sees and the actual internal code. But hold on, before it just waves that request through, our bouncer has to do its main job. It needs to check the request's ID, make sure it's on the list, and ensure it's allowed inside. And this is where the gateway pattern really starts to flex its muscles, centralized security. And this brings us to step 2 in the journey, validation. See, API management has this incredibly powerful policy engine that gets to inspect every single request. It can look for authentication tokens, it can check headers, and it can enforce all sorts of rules before a single line of your business logic even knows the request exists. So how do we prove who we are? Well, you've got options. You could be using JWTs, which are great self-contained tokens, or maybe OAuth 2 if you're giving limited access to a third-party app. And of course, in an enterprise setting, you can tie it all into Entra ID for rock-solid identity management. The best part? API management can handle any of these, no problem. And security isn't just about who you are. It's also about how you behave. Policies can enforce things like rate limiting, basically saying, hey, you can only call this API 10 times a minute. This is absolutely critical for protecting your backend from getting slammed, whether it's by accident or, a malicious attack. All right, so our request has been routed, it's been validated, and it's proven it's legitimate. So where does it go now? It finally gets passed off to the actual worker, the Azure function that's going to do the real work. We're on to step 3. After passing all those checks at the gate, the request is forwarded to its final destination. And just notice how protected that function is. It can operate with total trust that any request it gets has already been completely vetted and is safe to process. And this is where you really see how clean and organized this whole thing can be. To the outside world, you're presenting this beautiful, logical, RESTful API, but behind the scenes, each one of those endpoints is mapped to a small, single-purpose serverless function. A get to /products, that fires up the get products function. A post, that's the create product function. It's just incredibly neat. And right here, this is the big payoff. The code inside that create product function doesn't give a second thought to JWT validation or rate limits. Its one and only job on this planet is to create a product in the database. That's it. It's simple, it's easy to test, and it's totally focused on delivering business value. Okay, so let's put all the pieces together and look at the full blueprint for a system that's ready for production. We've got to think about the entire round trip and how we're going to manage this thing over the long haul. And here it is, the whole lifecycle in one go. The request comes in, it gets validated, It gets routed to a function, the function does its thing and returns a response. That response then travels back through API management, which can even transform it on the way out before sending it back to the client. This is our complete, solid pattern. But what happens when you need to change your API? You can't just break things for all your existing users. That's where versioning comes in. A really common way is to put the version right in the URL, like /v2/products. It's super obvious. Another way is to use a request header, which keeps your URLs looking clean. The cool part is API management can handle both, routing a V2 request to a totally new set of functions while leaving V1 completely alone. Oh, and one last critical piece of the puzzle, observability. Since every single request, good or bad, has to pass through API management, it becomes the absolute perfect place to log and monitor everything. You get one dashboard, one unified view of your API's health and performance without having to stick logging code into every single one of your microservices. It's a lifesaver. And that really just says it all, doesn't it? This architecture isn't about adding another layer of complexity. It's about managing the complexity that's already there. You let the gateway handle all the chaotic, messy parts of a modern API so that your backend code can stay clean, focused, and simple. So, there you have it, a powerful, scalable, and secure blueprint for building serverless APIs on Azure. It's a design that separates all the concerns so beautifully, letting you build really complex systems that actually stay manageable. Now the only question left is, what are you going to build with it? Thanks for watching.